Tonight on the Black Channel, black people aren't being displaced fast enough in New York City, so now the government has rolled out the red carpet with the illegals and giving a helping hand. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media. This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the voice of Black America, the Black Authority, broadcasting to you live from the only historically black college university of higher education and learning in the entire cosmos. Join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, for those of you who may have not been keeping track of this, although I'm pretty sure that you have heard here, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and he's not the only one actually, but Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been busing illegals coming across the border from Mexico since the Biden administration is now embarking on a campaign to flood every state with as many non-black illegals as they possibly can. The state of Texas is taking it upon itself to say, well, let's see if we can dump them off in some other places. Some of these places that were virtue signaling. So he's loaded up the Greyhound and sent them to D.C., New York, among some other places. Now, let's be very, very clear. This isn't all upside as you might think. There's actually more to it than that. However, I want to go over this story here from CNN so you can see it for yourselves here and see exactly what's going on, okay? So what I want to do here is, in this article here, of course, from CNN, 140 migrants welcomed in New York City from Texas in largest single-day arrival Sunday, officials say. So don't think it's just 140. It's been thousands and thousands. CNN, I'm telling you, is just the worst people ever, but thousands and thousands. The article here from Issa Kaufman Gabriel says, buses with at least 140 asylum seekers arrived in New York Sunday in what officials are calling the largest single-day arrival of migrants from Texas. The asylum seekers arrived on 3 buses into Port Authority around 6:45 a.m., Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs spokesperson Shana Coronel told CNN. The group was a mix of families and individuals, she said. City officials estimate there were around 10 children, including a 10-month-old baby. So some illegal alien was sitting up here marching across the border with a 10-month-old baby. Mom of the year. Quote, Texas has also bussed over 7,000 migrants to our nation's capital since April and over 900 migrants to New York City since August 5th, Abbott's office said in a release Friday. The busing mission is providing much-needed relief to our overwhelmed border communities. New York Mayor Eric Adams and other city officials have previously accused Abbott's administration of allegedly forcing asylum seekers on the buses bound for New York City and of not coordinating with city officials on the transfer of people. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Think about that for a few moments. So all of a sudden, you want folk to coordinate with you. I thought we had open borders here. Why do you need to coordinate with anybody? Abbott's office has responded in multiple statements that the people arriving in New York have come willingly and have signed a waiver consenting to their destination. Including the hundreds bussed in from Texas, about 6,000 asylum seekers have arrived in New York from border states since May, according to the mayor's Immigrant Affairs Office. 6,000. On Sunday, volunteers greeted the migrants and provided food, water, and clothing, Coronel said. The city is providing legal assistance as well, and there were 2 bilingual lawyers available to answer legal questions from asylum seekers, she said. Think about that. Coronel said a triage center was set up at the Port Authority to assess the migrants on arrival, and the city worked with the fire department. Your tax dollars at work, to provide medical assistance. Interesting, black folk in New York who 911 is a joke for. By the way, they don't have time for you. They're dealing with the illegals, don't you know? They're dealing with more important people. The city is also providing vans to transport migrants to shelters and hotels. Who's paying for the hotel? Aid workers from the Jewish community response group Masiba Relief were among the volunteers Sunday offering essentials like shoes and toiletries to the arriving asylum seekers. When the buses pulled up with the migrants on board, there were cheers and applause and signs of welcome written in English, Hebrew, and Spanish, according to the organization. The idea is to help people turn the page and start their new beginning here in New York in a better way, Masiba Executive Director Alexander Rappaport said in a statement. They are dedicated to this now, aren't they? They are dedicated to this. Think about that for a few moments. Understand something. When folks put their money where their mouths are, they're showing you what they believe in here. They're showing you what they believe in. You're seeing them pop up here, and did you all even know that was the Get Down up in New York? Did you all even know that that was the Get Down up there? And I want you to see something here in particular here, because I want you to be aware of exactly what you're dealing with in this regard. And I think it paints a very interesting picture for people to look at. I think it paints a very interesting picture to see here. When we talk about these organizations I was just mentioning here, you're talking about the Jewish organizations there that are supporting this. If you'd like to know who or what that is, here you go. Here you go. This is an actual picture from that event. This is an actual picture there. These are some of the folks here doing that. These are some of the folks doing that. Now, listen to this next part here, okay? The journey ahead of them is still going to be challenging, but we want to plant the seeds of change in their luck and give them their basic humanity back, Rappaport said. This is Rappaport from this Jewish community group, Masiba Relief. There are no Jews among these groups. There's no Jews among these people, but there's Jewish groups advocating for this. Now listen to what it says here. Last week, New York officials announced a multi-agency effort to ensure young asylum seekers have access to school placements before the school year starts next month. Quote, our public schools are prepared to welcome families seeking asylum with open arms, Department of Education Chancellor David Banks said Friday. Our schools are ready and excited to welcome our newest New Yorkers to class on September 8th. I wonder if these children are going to be placed at some of these Jewish schools. If the state was placing these illegals at these Jewish schools, would they still be advocating for them to come there? If the state were placing these illegals into these Jewish schools, would these Jewish groups still be advocating for them to come there? If you were placing them at their Jewish schools, their Jewish synagogues, would they still be doing that? Would they still be standing out there with signs doing that? Because you heard what it said. They'll welcome them there, and then, we're going to place them in the public schools. That means black folk. That means black folk. Now, for those of you who don't know, they've got when you go over to Brooklyn and Manhattan are really big enclaves. For example, Jewish landlords own a lot of buildings. I've seen them. You all know, all up and down Ocean, all up and down Flatbush, all up and down Amsterdam, all over Harlem. You got Jewish landlords all over the place. They don't care who's there. They don't care about the neighborhood. As long as there is someone there to work for them, as long as there's someone there to be nannies, they've always been a minority, so they don't care about the, quote, demographics of the area. As long as there's someone there to babysit their kids, fix on their properties, and pay the rent, they don't care about that. They don't care. Now, if you're sitting up here thinking, well, what does this have to do with us? I got one question to ask you right here. Just one question to ask you. So everything's going all right in New York now? Everything's cool? Everything's good? Everything's cool? Everything's good? Got one question to ask you for my brothers and sisters in New York, and I'm going to open up the phone lines here in a little bit so we can go ahead and talk to you. I want you all in particular to weigh in on this. For my brothers and sisters in New York, so everything's great? Everything's fine? New York City is humble abode now? It's all good? It's all good? Because I got to tell y'all, when I go over there off of Ocean where the letter streets are, they got security over there in that neighborhood. They got security with little security guard stands over there in those neighborhoods. I know, I've been there. It ain't nothing like Harlem. They got security in those neighborhoods where all these fundamentalist Hasidic Jews are over there. Yeah, there's only a few properties that they don't own. They're constantly trying to buy. There are only a few properties that they don't own. But they got little security guard stands in their neighborhood. I know, I've been there. Now, the security guards are black, by the way. But they got little security guard stands in their neighborhood. It's like a gated community without the gate. It's like a gated community without the gate. Now, some of you might be thinking here, well, what does that have to do with us? How does this affect us? How is this a problem for us? How is this an issue for us? Are you sure about this, Jason? How is this an issue for us? I guess you're trying to tell me everything's fine in New York City, although if everything was fine in New York City, if everything was all right in New York City, if everything was fine up there, and go ahead, drop a 10, come on in, everybody in, well, someone explain to me why in the hell this is happening then. If everything is fine there, if what they're telling you and everything is just fine, someone needs to come explain this to me then. The rent ain't just too damn high. The rent is out of this damn world now, is what it is. The rent's out of this damn world, and this was from just a couple of weeks ago here. You telling me that we can do this in New York City now? We can do this? We can do this in New York City? Because it looks to me like you can't afford to be doing this. It looks like you can't afford to be doing this. So what in the world's going on? What's happening here? Because it looks like you can't afford it. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, I mean, they're flooding the zone with as many people as they can. What they'll do, y'all got to understand, what they'll do is they'll pack 10 or 14 of them in a single apartment up there and get them to pay the $5,000 a month rent. Black folk ain't living like that, so the black folk get removed. You see how that works? Then once they've got their properties paid off and everything, then they'll come clear the illegals out and have some white folk take over. Next thing you know, it looks like South Africa. That's the way it plays. That's the way it plays out. That's the way it plays out. Yes, people, there is a direct link between this and this. There's a direct link between those two. There's a direct link between those two. You can't get around that. You can't get around that. I wanted to hold this broadcast tonight because I simply wanted to ask that question about whether or not y'all are okay with that. And I'm not really going to let the grass grow under my feet, to be totally honest. I'm not going to let the grass grow under my feet. What I want to do is I want to go ahead right now and open up the telephone lines. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the Black media. And I want to ask about this. Because listening to anybody else, you would swear that everything was all right. Everything's all right, New York. We good? We okay? This isn't an issue here. There's plenty of room in the public school systems. By the way, it's not just New York. It's not just New York, man. They're sending them all over the damn place. Wherever black folk are, they're sending them all over the place. New York and D.C. are just the poster children right now, but they're sending them everywhere. They're sending them everywhere. All over Virginia, Pennsylvania, Georgia, the Carolinas, not so much in Florida right now, but they're sending them everywhere. They're sending them everywhere. And that's why I'm making the point to you all here right now. There's a direct link between this and this. There's a direct link between it. They are not waiting around for events to happen in their favor. They're not waiting around anymore. They're getting right to it. They're flooding the zone and they're getting right to it. So I want my folks from New York to give me a call. And for the rest of the nation to pay attention. Because where black folk have gained in numbers, this is the kind of thing you're starting to see. See, there's a reason why they're sending so many of them up north. They call them Muslims. They mean this. We've always told you that's another word for black folk. And then next thing you know, they migrate over into D.C. and Chicago and things. As long as they are not in league with us, that's okay. They're going to park them. They're going to bring them in, park them next door to you. Because they're not going to park them next door to those Jewish folk. The very same Jewish folk virtue signaling those, okay, they're not bringing them to their neighborhood. They're not bringing them to their neighborhood. They're not going to park next to Rabbi Stevens up here. He ain't going to let them on his block. He's not advocating for that. He's advocating to get them in the city, but he's not advocating to bring them to his neighborhood. So where exactly is he expecting them to go? Since he's obviously not advocating them to come on his block, where exactly is he expecting them to go exactly? Where exactly are they supposed to be heading here? Since we know where they're not going. Black folk are getting squeezed out all over the place up there. They're getting squeezed out all over the place. And these folks here are making it clear to you exactly why they're doing it. By the way, I want to thank everyone here who has contributed to support tonight's program here on PayPal, Cash App, or Super Chat. So thank you very much to Najee, Mr. Will Height, and everybody else who's contributed to the program here. I want to go ahead and hit the phone lines is what I want to do. I want to get right into it. I know we're moving real fast here tonight, but I want to go ahead and get right into it. So let's go ahead and get the phone lines here. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Let me get caller from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, big brother Jason. This is brother Elijah calling out of Brooklyn, New York.
All right, Elijah, out of Brooklyn, what's on your mind?
Jason, before I get into it, I'm going to say, look, please, thank you so much for tonight's broadcast. This is a very sombering moment right now, because I've been out here since from Vegas. I've been out here since Memorial Day. I alternate between Las Vegas and New York City. I'm a Brooklyn native, brother. This everything. This goes back to your broadcast. I called on that program too. Black New York is gone, because you did that back in December of 2021 when you was talking about the Black New Yorkers and how they try to usher in the Dominicans to come in here and vote without being citizens, and luckily Black people to get behind it. Now they're using their next and last trick, or maybe it's one of many, I don't know, bringing in thousands and thousands of Mexican migrants under the same term, asylum seekers. And it's funny, 11 months ago on your broadcast, when you was talking about the Haitians, they tried to come to Texas seeking an asylum, and they got their asses ran out of here within a few days. All right. All due to not being on code with us. Brother, I have a question for you, because my head is all over the place. What do you're a wonderful prophet. I think you are on the Mount Rushmore of Malcolm X, Dr. Claude Anderson, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, etc. What do you see for the Black New Yorker? The reason I ask that, because
the reason why I ask that is because I've addressed that here.
Yes, sir.
Black folk in New York, I've always said black folk in New York are done.
Yes, sir.
That's the way I've always said that, and all I'm doing is giving you all an update on it. Black folk in New York as a group are done. And the reason why I say that is because black folk for a long time have supported public policies in New York that don't serve them. See, when y'all saw clowns like 50 Cent and some of these other dudes up there big up in the Latinas, this is where that goes. This is where that goes.
Sir.
So instead of getting black empowerment, stop me if this sounds familiar. Instead of getting black empowerment, they were chasing interracial sexual access.
100%, big brother. You and Professor Truth, when y'all both said when we couldn't get our hands on a white woman, we in a lot of these Negroes' minds, they said, well, let's go for the next best thing. So you are 100% on that.
Well, I mean,
brother.
Certainly it's really about priorities, and they prioritized interracial sexual access. Now, not everybody, but too many of them.
Yes, sir.
So instead of having a unified black public agenda, instead the agenda became something else. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. The agenda became something else. The agenda became something else. Let me get call from area code 347. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Sienna from the Bronx, New York City.
Hi, Sienna from the Bronx. What's on your mind?
Excuse me?
What's on your mind, Sienna?
Okay, I'm from the Bronx, and there's this program here in the Bronx called FIPS, which is sort of like a rental assistance program, which has been helping a lot of people survive here. It's the way that a lot of people stay in their apartments. Now, apparently, that program is going extinct, and it's no longer paying people's bills. Rents rather. So a lot of people are currently in the process of being evicted, and I think a lot of these migrants are somehow going to receive some rental assistance, and I really feel that they're going to take the place of the people who are currently now being evicted, which is a lot of Black American people. And I definitely agree with you. Black American people are being systematically just pushed out of New York, and it's very awful.
Now all the black folk are getting pushed out, and they're ending up in the Carolinas and Atlanta. They can't even get down to Florida.
Yeah, everybody's going back to the South.
No, they can't get to Florida now because all the white folk done flooded that decades ago.
Migrated to
So
Florida.
for those of you who don't know,
Yeah.
New York with the snowbirds thing, that started back in the 80s, but since then it's been retirees and whatnot. And because Florida has no state income tax, a lot of them, because they didn't have to pay pensions and stuff like that, or they're getting paid from pensions and things, they had their nest eggs and they went down to Florida. So that generational wealth and generational access of money started decades ago. Black folk now are just coming to Florida. Anybody trying to get there is just finding an expensive place to live. So if your paper ain't already straight, you can't go to Florida. So what they're finding themselves, places they used to mock, places that New Yorkers used to mock and laugh at 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the Carolinas, Kentucky, Nashville, Atlanta, the southern states they used to mock and whatnot. Now they're fighting now they're fighting to get, they call those rural. They don't have beaches like that, not like Florida does. Now they're fighting and flocking to get into them. There's a whole bunch of black folk from New York who have come down to Atlanta, for example. Whole bunch of black folk from New York who've ended up in Georgia. Up there in New York, it's a whole bunch of black folk who can't afford to stay there, so they want to sell their brownstones or whatever, take the money, and then go down and try to live out the rest of their measly lives in the Carolinas. Coming down to the Carolinas has been a real, for those of y'all who are not from New York, she knows coming down to the Carolinas is the big thing to do up there now for the older folks who can't afford to stay up there anymore. Carolinas, everything's about North Carolina and South Carolina. Everything's about
Raleigh.
That. So when Raleigh, Charleston, Fayetteville.
Very big.
You notice you don't hear any of them talking about Myrtle Beach, though. So you don't hear them talking about the beachfront areas. All of them talking about the city areas, but you don't hear them talking about the beach areas. So the really nice stuff, you don't even hear them talking about that because they can't even get in there. Even coming from New York, they still can't get in. So even in the Carolinas. No. So that's definitely what's happening. Now the deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, for the most part, they've made it as far as over to Tennessee. Well, they've made it as far as over to Tennessee. They've made it as far over there because, my documentary Gentrified, we talked about that with Nashville, Tennessee, Davidson County. So that's the hot spot, but that's really about as far as they go. They're not coming over to Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Not yet, they're not. But to be totally honest, that's really one of the few holdouts left. So what you have are a bunch of black folk being pushed out of New York. And now you can see they are actively bringing in non-black people to fill the zone. Actively.
Yeah, that's true. 100%. Thank you so much for taking my call. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. I mean, it's not accidental. It is not accidental. Let me tell you something right now. When you see something like this is what you call public policy. This is what you call public policy. This is not accidental. This is what you refer to as public policy. When you see that kind of thing, that's policy. That's government and institutions and folk putting their money where their mouths are. That's policy. Call from area code 202. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Linus Crown from Washington, D.C.
Linus from D.C. What's on your mind?
Yes, thank you so much for covering this story. I moved to New York back in 2012, and I left in 2020. I did some work on the Democratic County Commission for Kings County, which is Brooklyn. I don't know if you know this, but I'm directly mentored by Mr. Bob Law, who is also in race war. So we do a lot of organizing nationally around media. One of his contemporaries is New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron, who happens to be a long-time organizer. He's done a wonderful job in terms of making sure black folks in his district in East New York have been able to see some level of political power, and the establishment, especially the Jewish community, absolutely detest him. So this is my question, and I feel like this is something I should know. I mean, you are always reminding us that Dr. Carl Anderson has taught us that racism is a group sport. I understand the government's agenda as it pertains to immigration, especially the Democrats' agenda in terms of erasing black folks, foundationals in particular. But I don't understand other immigrant groups' participation in this immigration agenda and these folks being bussed. For example, if racism is a group sport and folks are coming from Mexico or, south of the border from Central and South America, why is it that a Jewish immigrant organization would show up and aid in those efforts, or other immigrant groups would sort of like participate in this agenda? Shouldn't they be competing against each other in America?
They are. And this is part of the strategy of it. They are. All right. Couple of things here. You got to know your history, first of all, so that you can see the world the way that they do. Not the way you do, but the way that they do. First of all, Jewish people have always been a minority everywhere they are. World War II just put a spotlight on it. But they've been a minority everywhere they are. They've never been a majority. Not like the Anglos or like black people. They've never been a majority anywhere. So their position, their geopolitical position, their geopolitical strategy has always been to ally with other people, because they've never really had numbers like that. So it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's Russia, whether it's Germany, Weimar Republic, Bolshevik Russia, it doesn't matter what you're looking at there. Yeah, they had a sizable population, but they've never been a majority. And they've never had the political sway to be able to dictate terms on things. So they've always had to use an alternative strategy. You have to be resourceful. You have to be unified. You have to have a code. That's what you have to do when your numbers ain't good and folk target you. That's the way you have to respond to that. So when you get over here to America, that's why, for example, in recent years, you've seen them going with the yarmulkes and the beards and everything, so that they can more readily identify each other. Big movement about that. But all over New York, it's all about the money, because that's what protects you. So why on earth would you be bringing in these other people? Because they have an agenda for them. They have an agenda. Jewish people do not rely on population numbers to control politics. That's not where Jewish people get their political influence from. They don't have the numbers. Got to remind you all, well, I've been telling you for over a decade now, they don't have the numbers. So you see, politics as far as voting don't work for them. They can't rely on population numbers in order to influence politics. They have to rely on something else. So you see, they can get in the back rooms and they got money moving. A bunch of those skyscrapers in downtown Manhattan built with Jewish money. So you see, in the back offices and things, they carry weight because of that. So the politicians that they support, what you then do is you conjoin your agenda with somebody else's. Follow me here. You can join your agenda with somebody else's. So what you do is you've got the landlords here and the property owners, and they want a worker base, a labor base, a tenant base that they doing okay, but they're never going to be able to rise to their levels. Let's be very, very clear about that. They ain't never going to be able to do that. These are not a bunch of soon-to-be millionaires getting off that bus. This is the next generational poverty. Over there in the Bronx, shooting things up. Over there in Long Island, shooting things up. Over there in Queens, messing things up. This is the next generation there. Okay, but they're nowhere near the Jewish folk in those areas. They're nowhere near them. They are strictly segregated from them. Strictly segregated. So you do, as you know, if you're from New York City, y'all got a bunch of rivers separating these things. Manhattan is completely separated from everything else. You have to pay. I said this a decade ago. You have to pay to get into Manhattan. You can't just come into Manhattan. You have to pay to get into Manhattan. Toll bridges everywhere. The only way that you can get into Manhattan without paying is you have to go way up around north, literally about 90 miles out of your way, and come back down if you want to try to get around any tolls. But other than that, you have to pay to come into Manhattan. That thing is literally physically separated from everything else. Literally. Well, that's where they are. And then across the river in Brooklyn, which has now just become the twin of Manhattan. So just understand that's the policy. They can bring them in because they have an agenda for it. They've never had the population numbers, but this is a part of, they've had economic numbers, and this is a part of their economic strategy. We have become too problematic and too troublesome because now over time we've started not trusting these politicians and their political donors. We don't trust them anymore. The movement has gone in a different direction, so now they're like, okay, time to replace them. So the rents and everything go sky high, which doesn't really affect the landowners because they already own the land. They're not paying the rent, they're just paying property taxes. But they're already getting exorbitant rents in their other properties, so they can afford to just pay for all of this as part of their investment portfolio. Once you're gone, then they bring in the replacements. The replacements are already too broke and poor. They will never challenge them. They'll all sit there, tend to an apartment. They'll go to work, scurrying around as best they can, and they feed the economy. You got to understand the quote unquote crumbling parts of take it from me as a person who's traveled across this country to all the affluent areas you want to name. Baby, I've seen segregation. I've seen how they do it. And if your money and your paper is straight, there are actually physical barriers between you and these other people. Downtown Chicago, there's physical barriers. In DC, the Capital District, all those buildings that Clark Construction builds in DC, all the condos and things, you know full damn well to get to them is a hassle. $295, $495, getting to those damn things is a hassle. Once you get there, you basically park your car and walk around. It's a hassle to get around. It's not like other places. So you have literally have physical barriers, literally. On top of that, you have economic barriers, literally. And these are the folks who, for the last decades and whatnot, what they were able to do, they got their money off of black people over the last century. They got their money off of black folk, and now it's about, okay, what will be the strategy going forward? Because they've already received it off of us in the last generation. They're just letting you know what the strategy is with the next generation. And so just understand, they're not relying on population numbers. They don't see the world that way because they've never been able to see it that way. So what you're thinking is, well, bring in these other people. Won't these other people get together? Population numbers have never controlled politics like that. They're worried about the economic numbers. Case in point, one man, Jeff Bezos, was able to get New York's politicians to defy and ignore their constituents. It was only because he didn't really want to go to New York like that they finally caved in. It wasn't because there wasn't enough uproar from the public. It wasn't that. So that's what you're seeing here now. In New York State, for example, I think you say you were from, did you say you were from New York or you used to just live in New York?
No, sir. I used to live in New York. I'm from Washington, D.C., Northwest D.C. Okay.
Well, I mean, in New York City and New York State, but New York State in particular, they have a damn landlords commission, a landlord lobbying group there. A landlord association. They have an association. For those of you who don't know, New York City literally has a landlords association. Literally. Now they send the Anglos to go represent them, but there's a whole bunch of Jewish folk in there. They literally have a landlords association in New York City. Literally. You don't have a landlords association because you ain't getting nothing done. You do not have a landlords association if you're not getting anything done. You have a landlords association because you get things done and you get it your way. So that's what you're seeing here now. This is a part of the formula for the next 100 years. They already got themselves caked up for the last 100 years. This is about the strategy that will carry them for the next 100 years. Because here's the last little component. All these other people are hobbled off by themselves away from us. Black people do not have any conversations with any of these groups. We are not sitting around the dinner table with these Jewish groups, these Arab groups, these Somalians, Latin. We're not sitting at the dinner table with none of them. None of them. What they talk about, 99% of what they talk about, we have no access to whatsoever. And the 1% we do have access to is useless. So they've got whole agendas that they formed that we are completely on the outside of. We find out what they got in mind when the buses show up. But we don't have any privy whatsoever to what they're talking about. What they talk about when they go home is a mystery. We know they're discussing us, but we have no idea what they're talking about. We need to stop telling ourselves that we have some idea what's going on. No, we don't. We don't have any idea what's happening whatsoever. None. And they are off and hobbled off and segregated by themselves. They are geographically, physically separated from us, economically separated from us. And the ramifications of what they're doing, they will reap the economic benefits while they have built a blockade between them and these other folks. Take a look at Israel and Palestine. I can keep going if you all would like. So while it seems to mystify you a bit, but that's only because if you're not aware of history and that they have accepted that they will never be they will never be a numerical majority of anything. They will never be the numerical majority of anything. So the strategy is cultivate allies and more than anything, develop capital. Because money runs politics. And they've made it their job to do that. Then when you take a look at the judiciary and how they've gained a foothold in that over the last 50 years, why would they be worried about population? Why would they be worried about demographic shift? They've already solidified their position. When you think about it in those terms, it makes sense. For you, those changes are scary. And you're like, aren't they worried? Oh, no, they've already thought this through. They already own the real estate that these people are coming to. I saw a report the other day that said that there isn't a single patch of new land available for sale in Broward County. I want to say I saw a report that said that there's not anything new available. Everything is already spoken for. Everything's already owned. Guess what? New York City is the same way. Everything is already owned in New York City. That's why you're having to build all these skyscrapers going up. Nobody can buy land anymore. Now they're buying air rights. Think about that for a few moments. They're not buying land anymore. They're purchasing air rights. That crazy ass little skinny skyscraper standing over Central Park, they're purchasing air rights now. So these other folk, they've already been locked and boxed before they even got there. They're just being brought in to serve. When you think of it in those terms, then you realize what the hell are they going to do? They're going to find out that they got put in the trick bag in about 15 years. Then they're going to try to use politics and beg and plead their way through it. And it's rinse and repeat. It's rinse and repeat.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my question. One thing that I did learn while up there and doing political work is how to look for and to support and endorse elected officials or folks who are running who do not accept money from the real estate lobby or from those landlord associations. All of the ones who do are compromised. So that was one thing that I did learn. And then I also learned the power of the Chinese Business Association's lobby group and the connection that they had to Black politicians. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm definitely going to do some more research and build up my knowledge base on geopolitics.
Well, let's be clear about one thing. You cannot be a Black politician elected to the state house in New York State unless already established money and power has got their hooks in you already. Now, how deep they are is a different matter, but you can't get that far without it. I know that might upset y'all about scrutinizing some of your quote friends. I understand that, but math is math. Math is math. Let's be very clear. A lot of these Black politicians, they play this game where they get in front of us and talk one way. And then once they leave and they're behind closed doors, they do something else, and then we can't figure out why nothing has changed. And they've always got a ready-made scapegoat to point the finger at elsewhere and say, oh, see, it wasn't me, it was them over there. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Hey, by the way, it seems like y'all don't like tonight's program because I don't see my likes doing very well. So if y'all like the program, go ahead and hit the likes button for me. But otherwise, it looks like y'all are not liking the program. I guess we're being too sobering and too serious tonight. So I'll go ahead and wrap things up here in a couple of minutes since clearly they don't like the program. Let me get caller from area code 267. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from 267 has been abducted. Caller from area code 916, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Caller from 916 is doing cocaine. Caller from area code 512, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, my name is Austin. I'm calling out of Manhattan.
Okay, what's your name again?
Austin?
All right, Austin out of Manhattan. What's on your mind?
So there's two things I want to talk about. Well, I want to start off. One was the rent here in Manhattan, and then two about the migrant situation. So I'm new to Manhattan, and I'm from the South originally. I'm from Texas, and coming up here, the rent's insane. Compared to what I was paying in Houston, it's out of this world. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they come to New York is a thing called broker fees. So when you get an apartment here, you have to pay usually I had to pay almost $6,000 off rip. And that's to the broker. That's not to the actual complex. That's not going to your rent.
Okay. Why in the world you got a bunch of New Yorkers trying to get to Texas, which is crazy, by the way. Think about this for a few moments, everybody. The illegals, the poor folk are getting kicked out of Texas and landing in New York. The folk with money are leaving New York and going to Florida and Texas. Brother, how in the hell did you end up going against the grain?
I've gotten this question a lot from even New Yorkers. So I got a hedge fund job here. So I feel like it was better for my career. That's the reason why I decided to come up here.
Now, let me find out here. Did you call in last night?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Make sure that we broadcast 2 times a night here. We broadcast once a night on weekends, or once every night on the weekend here. So 1 call per weekend. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Definitely, folks, because we get a lot of folk who want to get in here. If you have called in, remember 1 call per weekend so we can try to get as many people as we can. So give us a call back next weekend. Let me get caller from area code 415. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Denise in San Francisco.
Denise in San Francisco. What's on your mind?
Thank you. You said it very well. The comments you responded to that previous caller's questions, the female. I've been trying to wake black people up, and it gets very frustrating because they're still got these old ideals of people of color and unity. And I'm like, what? These people ain't trying to identify with us. And things are getting so critical for us. And they're bringing immigrants in here to replace black people. It's obvious. They'll get immigrants in a 1-bedroom apartment. Might have about 6 or 7 people staying in a 1-bedroom apartment. And these people aren't going to rebel against anything. They're so happy to be here. They're so frightened that they basically just go along with any program there is here.
Yeah, I mean, it basically is a repeat of what black folk did after the 60s and whatnot. They are just so grateful to be there that their policy is survival and doing better where they were. So they're so grateful to be there that they will overlook everything else that's happening. So the things and the disposition that it took us decades to gain and acquire, these folk here, they're going to push you out the way, and these folk come in ready-made to start that cycle all over again. So you're absolutely right about that.
Don't forget, these ready-made people, they're not going to properly identify with black people.
Absolutely not. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 443. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's up, Jason? How you doing tonight?
What's your name? Where you calling from?
Oh, Andre, Jason. Maryland.
Let's try this
Jason.
one more time. What's your name?
Andre.
Where are you calling from, Andre?
I'm calling from Maryland.
Where at in Maryland, Andre?
Oh, Jason, man, you owe me tonight. I'm calling from Greenbelt, Maryland. Not
Okay.
too far from D.C., basically DMV area.
All right. Andre from Slow Bus, Maryland. What's on your mind?
The short bus, not the slow bus, but the short bus. But anyway, Jason, man, really appreciate you, man. Information that you gave last week was crazy about Atlanta and what their brothers was going through down there. But yeah, but I'm up top right now in the DMV area, and I want you to know, man, the rent is extremely out of control out here. And another thing is this: I can't stress this even more. Family unity amongst black people, man. This is the time. It ain't even no more weight on it. Like, we really got to come under a union amongst the female and the male. You know what I'm saying? We got to come underneath a union because, I mean, I hear the ladies is talking like, oh yeah, what they're gonna do with all these immigrants coming in. I want the ladies to understand that these immigrants coming in, they're not just coming in by themselves. They coming in as a couple, and even if they come in as single people, they also reaching back for their wife or their husband back in their country, and it's very, very important, man, because even when we deal with politics now, Jason, yeah, we could deal with the politics here, but at the end of the day, if my female companion is voting for somebody else and I'm voting for somebody else, it defeats the purpose. We basically at a standstill. We need a union to know where our votes is going, which direction we going as a people. I mean, we could speak all of this what we trying to do, but if we don't have a foundation, how we gonna go further if we haven't planted the seed? And that's one of the problems that we have today, sir. Hello?
I definitely agree. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, my name is Lorraine. I'm from the Bronx, New York.
All right, Lorraine from the Bronx. What's on your mind?
I want to tell you about the trick bag that New York have going on right now. I live in public housing. So what they started doing is offering everybody Section 8 vouchers if they want to move out. But here's the thing. You get the voucher. So they'll pay your rent for a year. But then if the landlord comes back when it's time to renew the lease, if the landlord raises the rent, Section 8 won't pay that much. So what's going to happen is a lot of people who have an apartment in public housing is going to end up homeless from taking Section 8 vouchers. And you know who's going to go into the public housing? The immigrants.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
folks don't understand, you know, in New York City, because they do have rent controls and things like that. But for all of the talk about how hard it is to evict people who are under rent control and how hard it is to evict people in New York City, and it is true, it is hard to evict them there. So what the landlords and folk have done is they've gotten together and started, you know, reformulating the rules going forward. So the folk who are already in these situations, that's one thing. It's the folk going forward who are finding out that the new deal isn't like the old one. And the landlords now have resigned themselves that, okay, we'll just wait it out and we will just make a change every 5 years. Every 5 years, we'll make a new change and make a new change and make a new rollback. And then next thing you know, by my estimates, it's going to be probably about 25, 30 years before the laws in New York as far as rent and what they can do more closely resemble the South. More closely resemble the South. But you're absolutely right. The old thing there about, you know, you get your WIC voucher, your Section 8 voucher, and you're straight is, no, they're slowly but surely dismantling that. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 347. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, Jason, is it me? I'm live. Hello, Jason.
Caller from area code 201. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
TBA, hey man. Listen, this is Jay from Jersey. Listen,
Jay,
everything
from
that
where
everybody
at
said is
in
absolutely
New Jersey?
Passaic,
What?
New Jersey.
Where?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I agree with it.
Okay. Caller from area code 773. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, my name is Bobby. I'm calling from Chicago.
Bobby from Chicago. What's on your mind?
Hi, Jason. I wanted to know, did you know about this guy who's running against Lightfoot, who's a Democrat, LGBT, Hispanic? He went on Fox News bashing her. And also, this guy hasn't paid taxes in over 2 years.
Okay.
I mean, over 10 years.
Bobby, what's that got to what's that got to do with what we talking about tonight? For real. What's that got to do with what we
No, I'm
talking
talking about the immigrants. He gonna try to get them immigrants here and push the blacks out, cause they want Chicago to be.
Okay, let me answer your question here.
And AIDS.
In how is Lori Lightfoot's stance on illegals any different from his?
It is not.
Okay.
And also,
so do you get the point there? So his position is no different from hers. So he's not a game changer, and he's not making it worse, because that's what that is. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get a call from area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason. Tan, Long Island, New York.
All right, Tan from Long Island. What's on your mind?
I live in Long Island, but I'm basically grew up in Queens, in Manhattan, and watching the changes over the years, of the black neighborhoods, North Queens, Elmhurst, Corona, that side of Queens, and watching how the black community is gone now. Every time I drive through that neighborhood, my heart hurts and sinks, because historically, that's the area of Louis Armstrong on 107th Street. Historically, that area was a thriving black area, man. But like in the late '80s and all the way through, and they started locking up all the young black boys, the federal government going after the kids, and just locking up, destroying families, destroying homes, and just getting the young boys off the streets. And now, they brought in every other ethnic group to come in, and the neighborhood is gone. It's no longer black.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is also, if you don't value it, because let's be very, very clear. There's a lot of black folk who were up there in New York in the 70s and 80s. I covered this in my film Gentrified. They had, for every black person who bought some property up there in the brownstones in the 70s and 80s, you had 2 or 3 black folk who were like, nah, this is too old. I ain't worried about that, and didn't buy anything. Then after Giuliani comes in and the values shoot up, then all of a sudden they want to wait until after the bus is moving to try to jump on it. And that was a big issue. So now the heirs don't have anything. Miscalculation. That plays a major part in that also.
Hey, Jason, you are so right. The name Corona represents a crown. And I think the black community that was in Corona at that time did not know that Corona was a real. They knew it was a crown, but like as Latino, Hispanic, they know that crown is real, and they decided to go to that crown, and they making that crown their standing place. They're doing it, And I just I hope that the community, our community gets together with their families and friends and build and buy property,
Well, before you can buy property, you have to have an agenda for it, because everybody else is not just buying property. They bought the property because it's part of an agenda. So you need a small budget. Part of your budget's for the property itself. The other rest of it needs to be about how you're going to develop it. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get call from area code 480. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
It's Tasha.
Okay, Tasha calling from where?
I'm calling from Mount Vernon, New York.
Tasha from Mount Vernon. So when folks can't afford to be in Manhattan, they start running north. So you try to get up there in the Westchester, Valhalla, Mount Vernon. Y'all didn't think I knew all that, by the way. You all didn't think I knew all that. But yeah, by the way,
listen to me. You're a smart man anyway. So I'm not even defeating that. You're a very smart man. Listen, I just want to pinpoint something to you. I have a friend who has a friend that works for urban planning, and she told my girlfriend told me this a few years ago. They said that Mayor Bloomberg, formerly Mayor Bloomberg, started have a urban planning that he said he wanted all the blacks to come out of New York City and then keep the Hispanics here because Hispanics listen, they work hard. And I was like, wow, and I've seen that working in the city with the jobs and with the housing. Like on my job, I had applied for the not the low income, but the affordability. And I've noticed that I had two of my Hispanic co-workers got through and I didn't get through. And I was like wondering, I was like, damn, like how did they get through? We work the same way or what have you. And then another, I changed position. This girl, she was Hispanic, she came from Pennsylvania. She just got the position. She applied for one of the houses and she got through like that. Remember, she just got the job permanently and she came from out of state. So I was saying to myself, like, how the hell did she get it? And I never got the call. So my girlfriend said, her friend said that the voucher program, that's why the lady that called previously that talked about that FEPS program, they were giving it out, encouraging people to get in the housing and then take it and then move out of New York. So that was the plan, and I'm seeing that. So when the black move out in New York, then they come flood in with the other groups. And I used to work down in the West Side, and they were building up all of these high, all of these buildings. And then I remember one time I sat in the office and I said, why are they building all these buildings? Then I started watching YouTube. I started coming on YouTube like 2017, 2018, and they were talking about Agenda 21, about how they try not to make people own property. They want everyone to live into these micro cities, the buildings. And then I'm going to tell you something that you probably need to do. Go to New York City Museum. That's on Fifth Avenue. I had took my daughter there. And when I went, they had the whole master plan display of how New York City is going to look like by 2030. And let me tell you something, Astoria, I see it. Astoria, Queens, they said they want to have like the train, like this. It looked like one of those futuristic train line. The building, they were just showing Jamaica Avenue was on there. It was like a whole display. And that right there opened my eyes that, yes, they know what they're doing.
Michael Bloomberg, the Republican who became a Democrat to run for mayor. And everybody talks about Giuliani. Giuliani, if he cleared out the streets, Michael Bloomberg came in behind him to redefine them. He was very quiet in a lot of ways of what he did, but New York City has been fundamentally transformed because of him. Who can imagine what would happen if he had become president? Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 803. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, Jason. This is Saladin from the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
All right, Saladin from Charlotte. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's going on? So, a couple of years ago, I'm originally from New York. I lived in the Bronx in the Clashing Point area. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of black people is moving down to the South. I know primarily in Charlotte, a lot of them are coming down here with no plans, and the rents are actually going up just like it was in New York. And since they're coming down here with no plans and no skills, they end up struggling just as bad as they was back in New York City. And I was thinking about when you talked about the mayor that was in Atlanta, Georgia, that they was using as a proxy, the dominant society. I think they're pretty much doing the same thing. I think his name is Eric, the new mayor up there. I think they're doing pretty much the same thing with him, because since he's been in the seat, I noticed a lot of my family up there is talking about how New York's basically being ran down even more.
Well, I mean, understand something. None of these things happen accidentally. None of them happen accidentally. So you have these periods where it waxes and wanes and you flood the zone so you can go ahead and start remaking things. Landlords like to see property values drop. Understand that. Anybody who plays the stock market, you don't look for stocks that are stable. You look for stocks that are volatile. You look for stocks that are moving, either up or moving down. You don't look for a stock that's just in this holding pattern. So just understand what to you would seem to be, ooh, this isn't very good. Understand, for folk with money, they like that kind of thing. You take a look at car markets, real estate markets. Volatility is how money moves. Volatility is how money knows to move. Volatility is how you keep profits in a cycle. Understand that. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 917. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Brother T from Harlem, New York City.
All right, T from where?
Harlem, New York City.
Okay, T from Harlem. What's on your mind?
So I noticed about 5 years ago, I noticed they were moving a lot of our people up to Buffalo, New York City. They were pushing them up from Harlem, so they pushed them from Harlem, New York City, up into the Bronx, and then told them to go up to Buffalo. Buffalo is a huge ghetto in New York City. So they were doing some scam where they would tell them, oh, we got you could get a bigger place up in Buffalo for $700 a month. You could have a 4-bedroom apartment. We could get you out to projects. And in line, they started shipping a lot of these Hispanics into our historically black neighborhoods. Like everything in Harlem now, if you walk on 125th Street, it looks like a black neighborhood. But if you walk down the side streets, all the brownstones are $3 million and up. So we've been systematically pushed out the neighborhoods. We don't control any of the stores in our communities. I've noticed now when you take the train, everyone that's working at 5 o'clock are Hispanics. They're coming from the construction jobs. They're coming from the service industry jobs. So everything that was historically jobs that went to black folk are now going to Hispanic folks.
And they started with the construction thing. They started with that 30 years ago. So they moved from one industry to another, and it migrates over, and that's how you got here where you are now.
So I traveled throughout the country, and I noticed that everywhere. Like so say if I'm in Detroit, I noticed that now all the guys that are paving the concrete now are Hispanics. And I'll go up to them, I'll query them, I'll ask them, hey, where are you from? Hey, I just came from Nicaragua a year ago. They're making jobs that historically should be going to young black men. These guys are 20 years old, but every time I go to Chicago or Detroit or Baltimore, all our black men are hanging out in street corners, and no one gives them the chance to grab a job, a well-paying construction job, but they're giving it to these Hispanic people that came here illegally, and they're giving them the chance to earn, quite nice figures. While our young men are just hanging out in the street corners. It's not because they don't want to work.
It's not accidental. It's not accidental. This has been a long-standing, long-running campaign. This is public policy. You can't get into this situation like this if it were not public policy. Public policy is not just what's passed by laws by the mayors and whatnot. Public policy is whatever they do. It's whatever they enforce. Call from area code 201. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, Jason, this is Spirit out of Jersey City, New Jersey.
All right, Spirit out of Jersey City. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I was thinking, listening to your program, I was like, okay, what if all these immigrants that are being flooded in our country were being placed there because they know they got to pay us, and they know they got to pay us very well? Could it be that they putting them there because they're gonna be the next working class for the next up and coming.
They already are.
Wealthy people.
They already are. California,
What do you mean?
Florida, brother, California, Florida, the Hamptons, Manhattan, they already are. They're not on their way to it. They already are. This is about solidifying their position.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh,
this is only about
definitely.
solidifying their position now. This is not about getting them in that position. This is about solidifying it to make sure now it's locked into place. That's what this is about now. But anybody who's been to any of the major states and whatnot, oh no, that's already a done deal. Now all they're trying to do is solidify it. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller America code 631. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, TBA, this is Scholar from Long Island, New York.
Okay, what's the name again?
My name is Scholar from Long Island, New York.
All right, Scholar from Long Island. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate on what the other brother was saying about how they taking over the work sites and all that stuff out here because, you have brothers coming down from Atlanta, Georgia. They'll be bringing the fruits and vegetables and stuff like that to Long Island. That's how we get our fresh watermelons and stuff. But now when you drive down the road, you see the Spanish people parked on the side and they selling these bogus watermelons with no seeds in them. So they taking that job. And then, like, I used to hustle, like, go up to Manhattan, over 25th, the wholesale garment up there. And I used to get clothes on wholesale, you know what I mean? So when you go up there, that changed now, you know what I'm saying? Brothers used to get the jeans and all that, bring it home, feed their families and all that. So now that's changed. That's all taken over by Spanish people getting the clothes and sending it over to their country. And you know what I mean? Then you had the, ever since, but on Long Island, when Jeff Sessions, when Trump waged war on, because I'm right here in Brentwood. You know what I'm saying? This is where the war was raged, right here on the MS-13. I was here when these people got killed. The girls got killed over here. The two girls got their eyeballs dogged out and all that by these immigrants. And so they was quiet as a mouse then. But as soon as Trump left office, they started doing all that. I mean, when Trump was in office, they took the little blue and white stickers off the window, the little boy with the hat no turned backwards, all that was gone. But now, Obama's man back in office, all that back. These people think that they're top dog out here, man.
Well, definitely, it's one of those situations there where, and thank you for giving us a call here. You know, when black folk stand around the street corner, that was called loitering. Let's keep that in mind now. You see, America has always had a policy of limiting black people's movements. The Mann Act, the Fugitive Slave Act, the war on drugs, confiscation. They've always had that. They have always had policies in place that limit black people's movement. They've always had that. Asset forfeiture. When black folk are around somewhere, there's always a policy that physically limits you. That literally physically limits you. Let me get caller from area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening. My name is Sandra. I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York. East Flatbush. That's specific. I'm listening to a lot of the callers, and when they say Long Island, are you in Westbury, Old Westbury? Where are you? And I'm the teacher. You've spoke with me before. You got to get more sharp, folks. You know, we know the game. We know Bloomberg's agenda. Now what? Do you have good credit to purchase property? If 10 of you go in, do all of you have good credit? Can you retain an attorney to go into a brownstone that's millions of dollars? Can you do that? Can you keep up on your mortgage payment so that the property becomes yours more and more? This is what the strategy should be. I don't care that Hispanics are taking the lower level jobs. We are past that. 2020, you had a whole year to learn something new. I sat here and I elevated my knowledge, okay? And I'm a baby boomer. Your brains are way, way younger than mine. You should be online with some heavy-hitting IT jobs, not worrying about rent. You shouldn't be worried about rent. You should be paying a mortgage. Enough with the rent. Public housing, we all know they're going to sell it to a developer. This is a rinse and repeat. How much more do you have to see that repeats itself? You know, I don't get it.
Well,
You're complaining
certainly.
about something that repeats itself.
Well, it repeats itself, but for a lot of black folk, it has not. I mean, it becomes complicated because these things shift over time. It morphs over time. It transforms. You have legislation and regulations that are put into place ostensibly to either curb it or to stop it. And then something else comes along that gives a loophole to it. So here's the thing we have to understand. That's the way that pressure valve works. So I want you to understand this so that you recognize why that happens. What happens is they will put, slow down. I'm hosting my program. Slow down.
Yeah.
As I was saying, what you all need to understand is that people are responding to things. And one of the first things that happens here is that, yes, things occur and then something else happens. You have a new rent control regulation. You have people who get to, every time I go up to New York City, there is practically always some sort of town hall meeting or a city council meeting going on about the rent situation. Every time I go up there, it seems like that's a concerned citizens group. Bunch of folks sitting there to object to one thing or another. So it isn't political activism that is the problem. Because clearly, from what I've seen, there are enough folk up there, every time something happens, they're active about that. The real thing is understanding that as long as these things are put into place, and sounds like she's chopping wood right now, so thank you very much for giving us a call. The real thing is understanding that when you make one move, they make another one. And it can be very hard to keep up with that. When you make one move, they make another one. This is why it is important to be organized. And by organized, I mean organized economically, which is what I think she was alluding to. But just understand, just because you're not thinking about politics doesn't mean it's not thinking about you. And every time we make a move, they make another one. And then when you force them to do something that you want, somebody comes up after you've left. This is the warning for the folks about reparations in California and other places. After you've gotten what you wanted, somebody's going to come up behind you after you've left and say, okay, how can we go ahead and put in the lemon twist to undo what was just done? How can we go ahead and make a loophole that neutralizes what we just did? Recognize that when you see that. You have to stay vigilant. Caller from area code 484. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, this is Opus Day, Blue October of Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania.
I hope it's Dave from Allentown. What's on your mind?
Okay, big bro. First of all, let me tell you that I've been listening to you for years, man. And I can't even express. I can't. I'm 50 years old and I cannot express the gratitude, bro. Second, I'm watching this whole transformation from New York. They're coming into Allentown, so I can give a personal testament to this one. They're coming into Allentown, into Pennsylvania, and when they come in, they are raising the price. It seems like as soon as they touch base in that area, the price of housing is shot up virtually overnight. So I don't know if there's a correlation between Pennsylvania and New York and the rising prices. All I know is it is extraordinary. I've never seen it at this rate. It's almost like
here's the thing, okay? You have to see Pennsylvania and the way that somebody from outside of it sees it. As for me, as a person driving up Interstate 95, Pennsylvania is just this weirdly convenient place. It's not terribly far from DC, and it's not terribly far from New York either. So Pennsylvania exists in this weird little zone of convenience. And it's this very old place, but it's just weirdly convenient. So yeah, you're going to catch it from both sides. So with Pennsylvania, it in many ways is co-opted as a suburb of New York. And it's now the only problem for it is it's as old as it is, Declaration of Independence and everything else. And it really was an industrial center, so it doesn't lend itself to having large tracts of land that can be developed in that way. It is not, while it has proximity to these other places, it doesn't have convenience for some of the things these other folk are used to. So it goes a little bit differently there, but certainly you're going to see much more of this as time goes on. They're going to have to redo that whole thing. But then again, they got time.
I'm thinking it is part of their agenda. Like Pennsylvania has this real key part in playing the Northeast takeover. I really believe it. I just never seen it kicked up in Pennsylvania as any other state. They really are ramping it up, Jason. I can't even express it, bro. I got one more thing I want to say, and I need your opinion on this one because I've been thinking about grabbing some real estate, and I've been doing.
Well, hold your question. Hold your question there about that. For those of you who have not been to someplace like Philadelphia, for example, y'all got to understand when you get outside of Philadelphia proper, whether it's Plymouth's Meeting, whether it's Horsham. A lot of that looks like upstate New York. I'm talking about 2-lane asphalt roads for miles and miles and miles. So for people from New York City going down to just getting outside, I mean, now not King of Prussia or nothing like that for my folks in Philadelphia, not King of Prussia, but certainly when you're talking about areas like Plymouth's Meeting, Germantown, when you start talking about those areas there, you're talking about I'm talking about literally 2-lane roads. It's crazy. But it reminds you more of upstate New York than New York City. Yeah. And it is very, very familiar. The environment of that is very, very familiar. The architecture, the foliage even the trees and stuff is very, very familiar for people who will be from upstate New York. So, yeah, the transition for them would really be seamless in a lot of ways. The less congested parts they like, Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia proper, has a lot of that already in place.
It's almost like an infrastructure that was already set there for them to migrate to. It's not like they came and developed it. It's almost as if Pennsylvania has been making it accommodable for people from upstate New York to come down and almost slide and transition without the rest of the people in the population actually noticing it.
It's like Florida. It's like Florida, for example. You got a lot of New Yorkers who have a place in New York, and for the decades now, they've had a vacation home in Florida. So Pennsylvania is not immune to that. Virginia, Charlottesville, you got a lot of vacation homes in Charlottesville, Virginia Beach, Myrtle Beach. I can go down the list. So in a lot of these states that you would think that New Yorkers and whatnot were flying over for all these decades, no, in reality, they actually have properties in those areas already. What was your question?
Planting seeds. Oh, okay. So, in regards to the real estate, Southeast Texas, $600 is under $600 an acre right now. There's been a huge push for the last year and a half, I don't know, to get over to Southeast Texas. And I've been hearing this from you, like, bruh, avoid Texas. But when you look at the acreage and how much it's costing per acre across the nation,
is worthless if you cannot develop it. Real estate ownership is a 3-step process if you wish to have profitability. It is a 3-step process. First of all is finding the piece of land at a price you want. Second is developing that piece of land or that property, finding a property at a price you want, developing the property at the price you want, and then getting somebody else to pay you at the price you want. It is a 3-step process. And where black folk get into trouble is when they start having conversations like this, somebody, I'm not saying you, but somebody will have an oversimplistic explanation that leaves out one, or worse, leaves out two of these things. Because usually when I talk to black folk for the last 10 years, especially black males for the last 14 years, they get to that first step. Well, I can buy a piece of land. It's not Field of Dreams. You don't just buy a piece of land and off it goes. When you talk about people like Elon Musk coming to Austin, he's not actually coming to Austin. They're actually coming outside of Austin, but it's close enough. When you talk about Elon Musk coming to Austin and what he's doing there, he's bringing a couple of $1 billion with him. He didn't come to buy a piece of land because he's bored. He's coming and buying a piece of land because he already said, I want to build a factory. He didn't start with, I want to buy a piece of land. He started with, I want to build a factory. The goal is to build a factory, not to have an open piece, just to purchase a piece of land. He's not just here to purchase dirt. So I got to get us to shift to the mindset of, what do you intend to do? And then you go purchase the land, because here's the crazy part. When you talk about real estate in New York, for example, You take a look. There's money coming from around the damn world. You know, one was it the new Vanderbilt skyscraper they got. There was one Vanderbilt or whatever it is. The rest of them, Park Ave, all these skinny skyscrapers that they're building. Those folk didn't
Looking
wait.
weird.
Okay, but those people didn't wait to get a good price. There's a bunch of places around the country, going by your logic, there's 100 other places around the country that they could have taken the exact same amount of money and built something much more spectacular. But they didn't. Now, with as much money and resources and access as they have, they didn't go to Dallas, which is blowing up, San Diego, which is way expensive, but still not as much as New York to build something like that. Seattle, which would have been cheaper, but blowing up. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Atlanta, Miami, we can go down the list. They didn't go to any of those. They demanded to go slug it out and to go through all the legal shenanigans of purchasing air rights in New York. So what I'm telling you is that when you have an actual agenda, you start with what the end goal is and work back, and then go start at the beginning to work backwards to it. It's more like you start with, what do I want to accomplish? And then you set out a game plan. You don't start the game plan and then figure out what you're going to accomplish. They already knew what they wanted to do. And then they said, okay, let's just get the funds together to make that happen.
You get what I'm saying? That's exactly what brother, thank you. Because I was already looking at, I'm like, why get it? Should we have a plan for development before? Because we're talking about a couple people going in and doing this together as a group.
Well, you say a plan for development. You say a plan for development. I would say you should have a goal first. What is your goal? What are we trying to accomplish? It can't just be black folk needs to own things. That's not a goal. That's an ideal. It's not a goal.
Means in the end, that doesn't.
Elon loves the idea of electric cars, but that wasn't a goal. I need to build a factory that mass produces electric cars. Now that is a goal.
There you go.
Now that you've done that, we will start the process. Well, how do you make a factory that builds electric cars? Well, first of all, you have to have real estate. First of all, you have to have backing. Then you have to have real estate. Okay. And a lot of these parts here tend to circulate back onto each other, because once you start looking at the real estate, okay, well, how much does that cost? What's actually available out there? Gotta go back to the backing stage, and we need more money. So you see that, but that's what happens when you're in the process of doing that, because it's a process. So more than anything else, just finding a cheap piece of land is not a goal, nor is that an agenda. Having a goal, what I'm going to get done, that's the agenda. Then the land and the backing basically start filling in from there. Or you have a clear idea of what to do to get the land and the backing, so that we can turn this ideal into a goal, and then turn that goal into a real thing. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. It's like if you want to buy a car, if you want to buy a house, although this does have some more involved steps. Let me get caller from area code 980. You're on Live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mr. Black. This is Joe from Charlotte.
Joe from Charlotte. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. Yesterday, I was making a delivery down there in Charleston again, and I struck up a conversation with one of the managers in one of our James Island stores, and she was telling me there's this new apartment complex right across, like right next door to it, and the rent there is like $4,600 a month. And she was telling me how they push the homeless people, and there's a homeless problem in the outskirts, because they push the homeless people out of the downtown area in Charleston. There's been a lot of crimes and whatnot. She's been telling me, now this is a white woman. This is in their white neighborhood. So I was only imagining what's going on in the non-white areas. And like she was telling me, like the dude behind the store got hit up with a hatchet and all that stuff that just happened a couple of days ago and everything.
Yeah, and some of that craziness you're used to seeing in other areas there. Now, as you all know, I just came back here from Charleston here a couple months ago. And I mean, the amount of development going on down there, especially on the riverfront, I mean, you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars going on down there. Hundreds of millions. And I mean, when you're going on some of those streets up there and whatnot, I mean, that ain't no damn joke is what I'm trying to tell people. So remember, I was telling you all, getting fresh off the freeway. When you're getting right off the freeway coming into Charleston, it ain't no damn joke. When you're getting right off the freeway coming into Charleston, they playing no games, is what I'm trying to tell you. Right there in the same place where Dylan Roof killed every damn body. You know, when you talking about East Bay Street. Talking about East Bay Street. Now, my folks who live there understand what I'm talking about down there. East Bay Street. That whole thing down there looks like something you'd expect to see in San Francisco or something. Everything's supposed to be within walking distance and all that. Everybody wants to develop that kind of thing. And they ain't playing no games there. So just understand there's a lot of money moving. There's a lot of money moving right now, and it positioned itself there a long time ago. It didn't wait till now to do it. It positioned itself there a long time ago. You're just witnessing the outcome now.
And she mentioned something about the labor. She was short-staffed at the store, right? And she talked about one of our stores down in Johns Island. Now, I mentioned that in an earlier broadcast where they only got, like, all immigrants working there, right? And they're busting them and whatnot. So I did some digging. I was cordial and whatnot. And I was getting information out of her. And in that same complex where the rent's $4,600, they got some sort of stipend or something where they're bringing over Jamaican students or something like that. And then I put two and two together. I was like, oh, they're about to flush out all these low-income people and then start using the immigrants here again, like they did down in the other store, to start working in the stores and stuff. Because I asked her, I was like, okay, these workers that work here, they don't make that type of money to be able to afford there, because she was complaining about it. And I was like, so where do they live at? And she kind of just shrugged her shoulders because she ain't know where the hell.
No. If she knew all the rest of that, brother, she knows that. You were asking too many. Y'all got to understand something. How old are you?
29.
Okay. Learn something real quick, young man, because I learned this when I was more than a decade younger than you were. I was sitting with a white man. He was a millionaire in Louisiana. He was setting up his business, and I was asking him about how he was getting things done. And he was telling me about the peripheral things and how successful he was in XYZ. And as soon as I asked him about, well, how did those people approve those contracts for you, he started clamming up. I've told you all about it was another fellow, and I confirmed with him, multimillionaire in East Louisiana. And he was drunk as hell when I was taking him back home all the way out in East Louisiana. And next thing you know, he was drunk as hell until I started asking him about how he was getting the financing for what he was doing. Don't you know he clammed up? That bastard sobered up real damn quick. He sobered up real fast. So understand something. Don't mistake that for they don't know. Brother, they can answer every damn question you got. You tried to open a forbidden door. You were asking too many questions. See, you didn't understand what you were doing. So I got a question. You tried to open a forbidden door, and as soon as you tried to do that, I don't know. Well, I'll be damned. The heifer knew every damn thing else. Now, how she know all the rest of that, and then all of a sudden something this simple she doesn't know? She does know. She's just realizing you asking too many questions. Let me go ahead and cut that off here now, because she knows what you plan to do with that information is not what she plans to do with it. Y'all got to understand something. When you hear white folk complaining, it doesn't mean the same thing when y'all are complaining. When white folks are complaining, it doesn't mean the same thing. When white folks say the rent's too high, it don't mean the same thing you mean. They don't mean what you mean. You mean something different than they mean. You mean something different. You do not mean the same thing that they mean. You're using the exact same words, you're both talking about the exact same issue, and you both mean two separate things. When they say crime, they don't mean what you do. You think you do, but you don't. When they talk about finding workers, you don't mean the same thing they do. You think you do, but you don't. Let me tell you something. When they talk about workers, they're just talking about having a labor class. They need to have a steady pool of people they can draw from. Since they already own the property, then you can't set up nothing without property like that. So they've already set up a situation where all we got to do is bring in a bunch of people. Once they get here, their mobility is already limited. They'll have no choice but to come to work for us, so they will work for us. They will work, but they own nothing. That's the problem we got with black folks. We got to get black folk off the idea of wages and onto the concept of ownership. And most of these immigrants have very much proven that they're perfectly fine working. They're okay working as hard as they want to, but not owning anything. In other words, they are a non-threatening class. They're a non-threatening socioeconomic class. And that's the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sweet spot.
So I got a question about something she said then, because, you know, I'm a trucker, and I asked her, you know, I was inferring about information on, you know, the docks and stuff up that way, and you know, how they take the stuff, and she had a brother or a family member that did that, and she emphasized to me, she pretty much was like, make sure you get in with the longshoremen, and she told me it's not, you know, it's not how good you are and what you do, it's who you know, pretty much.
For the longshoremen, it's always been that way.
And whatnot.
It's always been that way for the longshoremen, for merchant marine, pipe trades and whatnot. It's always been that way. So she's right about that. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 347. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Jason Black. This is Wayne from New York, and I think one of the solutions
Wayne
is
from
for all
where
of us,
at in New York?
from Brooklyn, New York.
Wayne
And
from
there's no
Brooklyn.
reason
What's
for
on
me
your
to-
mind, Wayne?
Wait, say that again, brother.
What is on your mind, Wayne?
Okay, Jason. There's no need to reiterate how Bloomberg messed with the rent control and his agenda and everything. I mean, your audience is so intelligent, they're so smart, they're on point. What I think we need to do as Americans is come together and stop paying taxes, income tax, everything. Just stop filing everything.
Okay. That sounds
it.
great. That
That's on
sounds
my mind.
wonderful, but it's also impractical.
And that's what we need to do. Be impractical, be rebellious. These immigrants, I doubt.
Brother, let me
they're
ask
doing
you
as much
a
action
question here, Wayne. How much do you make a year?
Shit, right now I'm not making nothing. I'm not making anything.
All right.
I'm pretty much. And last year I didn't.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. If you all want to know where that suggestion came from, where the germ of the seed of that little spark of genius came from, I just wanted to, I could have sat here and talked to him for 20 minutes and dissected it down to the DNA, but let's just go ahead and cut to the chase. How much money you making a year? Oh, I ain't making nothing. Oh, okay. That's our financial advisor. Your financial advisor is somebody with no finances. After all these years, people, you should be able to knock this stuff out with just one question. You should already know what the deal is. Nothing comes to a dreamer, or to a sleeper, but a dream. Caller from area code 407. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Chris calling from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Chris from Las Vegas. What's on your mind?
Well, one of the things I wanted to address with you was I originated from L.A. Now I live here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I think one thing that typically happens when the migrants move into predominantly black neighborhoods is you got to address the discrimination and racism. They typically tend to identify as the white class, and it's something I'm now seeing here in Las Vegas, especially in the North Las Vegas, which was once predominantly black.
All right, let's talk about that desert area out there and whatnot. So Nevada, Arizona. If you all remember in 2008, that was kind of a big thing that they were focusing on, like the hospitality workers and that union that they have out there. That was a big thing they were focusing on. And since then, they've been focusing on that as well. So the hospitality and linen workers, or whatever they call the union. And so that was really when they were making a big push about that. That when the national media started focusing on that, they were letting you know, hey, we need all of y'all to gather and rally around this. We need you to rally around that. When you go through Arizona, for example, Tucson, Phoenix, but Tucson in particular there, you got mobile home parks out there filled with nothing but Latinos. No black folk out there. I should know. I was there. Same thing in Phoenix. I should know. I was there. You don't really see white folks in appreciable numbers like that until you get, in town or whatever. But on the outskirts of those things, the folk working at the airports and stuff like that, it's very clear to see what's going on. Very clear to see what's going on. And it's been in place. So what you're finding is you're going into these things. And there's a lot of black folk moving from other places trying to go to places like Las Vegas and things like that and not realizing the whole demographic has changed. If you think it's just a big desert area, Absolutely. It's like, oh, no. Housing prices are out of control in Vegas.
Yes,
they are out of control. If you think Vegas is some safe area, if you think you found some hidden gem, that some hidden secret that nobody knows about, you got a big ass surprise coming when your ass shows up out there. I'm not even going to. I'm not even talking about on the strip or nothing like that. That whole county out there is out of control with the housing prices. It's out of control now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Let me get call from area code 417. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yes, good evening, Brother Jason Black. This is Alistair from Branson, Missouri. How you doing this evening?
Alistair from Branson, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Yes. Another thing I've noticed here, I've been living here in Southwest Missouri for 22 years. Mainly I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. But what I've noticed is since I moved here to Branson, I've seen a lot of immigrants, primarily from Africa and in the Caribbean. If you would have told me that you would see that one day Branson would have a Jamaican restaurant, I mean, you would have been laughing about that. But now they got two of them and everything else. They also got, other African restaurants that are developing in the outskirts of Springfield and everything. But right now, Springfield is going through a serious problem with crime and everything else. They have this number one rate of crime here in the state of Missouri. But
okay, well, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight and giving us the crime report. Let me get caller from area code 205. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, this is Marquez from Birmingham, Alabama.
Marquez from Birmingham. What's on your mind?
Okay, I wanted to bounce an idea off you. Okay, you remember the Freeman Bank back in the day? Do you think we need to revive that?
Well, I mean, certainly having your own financial institutions is a big help here, but you don't get there without having an agenda. So the people as a group have to have an agenda. Agenda simply means y'all are all moving the same way in appreciable numbers. So you have to have black people as a group appreciate their dollars, appreciate their economy, moving in a disciplined manner. That's what you have to have. So from there, your financial institutions become a fait accompli. It becomes a given once you have that. Somebody's trying to call you on Facebook. It might be money. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 919. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
How you doing, TBA? This is Chris calling from Brooklyn, New York, Brownsville.
All right, Chris, when I was Brooklyn, over there going to the community,
how you doing? When I was over there going to the community board meetings, I literally tried to speak up for the neighborhood. I literally got my brand new brownstone, my house out there. I couldn't even speak because they wouldn't even allow for it in the community board meeting. And I had a young coalition behind me. What was sad, they literally had terms where they can sit on the damn community board for 10 to 13 fucking years. So when it comes to basically when people talk about we should work together, you're so fucking right about those old niggas. At the end of the day, they literally just sat there, stalwarted. A white, literally, corporation came in and literally set up and literally told them, no, don't let them speak, don't let them say anything concerning this and whatnot. And they literally blocked out any progress. Brownsville will become Whiteville, literally, guaranteed. There was white people that was running down my block, and I was living off the Eastern Parkway and whatnot around 11 and 12 o'clock, midnight. It's crazy. You talk about gentrification, you're accurate.
I mean, look, I said it a decade ago, and I was a much younger man than I am today. I'm not even going to try to pretend like I'm some young cat like that. And my advice to those of you in your 20s or even your early 30s has not changed. You got to watch out for these old niggas. Because I want you to understand something. It's actually easier to buy off these old niggas than it is the young ones. The young ones at least have some idea of everything that is available and all the opportunities available. So in reality, it's actually harder to buy off the young ones than it is the old ones. The young ones still have a long runway in front of them. The old ones, if they've screwed off all their good years, nigga, they trying to cash out as quick as they can. They're trying to make it as easy as they can. They're just trying to have a peaceful death. Young people are ready to kick up some dust. Old niggas are just wanting a peaceful death at this point. So when it's time to fight, you all are the first ones to raise your fists. The old folks are the first ones to sit on their asses. And when you're in a war zone, that's deadly. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Let me get called area code 623. There's an area code I haven't seen in a while. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from area code 623. There's an area code I haven't seen in a while. And I guess now we know why. Caller from area code 412. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. My name is Robert. I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Robert from Pittsburgh. What's on your mind?
It's been said we have to have a plan and work our plan, because if we don't, someone will work their plan on us. We must graduate from being parasites on luxury and be focused collectively for wealth building. We must not allow distractions to knock us off our square. And distractions I'm talking about are opiates of the society. It can be sports, it can be how you look, and quit trying to get people to accept us. We have to start loving each other and working together, because if you look at the past, the black man and the black woman together, we built pyramids. So like we need to reestablish that type of worth to each other to do that, because other groups are working as a team. I mean, we should start working as a team, just like we do in the sports, for lack of a better analogy, and develop ways to how to beat somebody by working collectively. And one thing I like about you, Jason, is that you can hit the pulse of what's happening politically and economically. But one thing I'd like to know is, with us fighting, it seems like fighting against everyone. Everybody's against us. Everybody's trying to displace us, and the government is working against us too. What would be the number one thing that we can focus on to try to extricate ourselves out of this negative
The first
maelstrom?
thing is discipline, discipline, discipline. You must have an agenda. It is not enough to be in bad spirits. It is not enough to be oppressed. It is not enough to know that you are oppressed. You have to have an agenda. You have to have an agenda. If you don't have that, then literally nothing else happens. Being discontent with your environment is not enough. Knowing who is oppressing you is not enough. Being discontent with who's oppressing you is not enough. Change happens when you coalesce around an agenda. That means more than anything. You all keep hearing me say the same term tonight, because agenda is where thought and desire meet action. The efficacy of an agenda can be measured. So when you start and it doesn't take here's the crazy part, it doesn't take a big group to do that. It doesn't take a big group of people to do that. You can have 2 or 3 of y'all. If your credit is straight and y'all got some money in the bank, you can start making some moves. I mean, just something as simple as a restaurant, something as simple as a gas station, that doesn't take 10 million people. The reason why black folk think of that terms is because when you got everybody sitting around trying to dream their way to salvation, well, there's where you get into trouble. No, you can't dream your way to salvation. You got to work your way to that son of a gun. I'll let you have the last word.
Well, it's been said that dreaming without works is empty. And I appreciate your stand that you're taking. One thing that concerns me is simple directions. Like you tell people over and over, what's your name and where you're calling from? Why should that even be a production just to get that information? Brothers and sisters, we got to do better. Peace, my brother.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Let me get caller from area code 757. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason, is that you? Jason? This is 757. Can you hear me?
Yes, nigga,
Jason?
we can hear you. What is your name? Where you calling from?
Okay, this is Gus. I'm calling from Newport News, Virginia. I moved down here from New York City in 2015. And I just wanted to say what I've been seeing. I left New York City 7 years ago because I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and that New York City was just on the way downward. They were on a downward spiral. And so I moved down here. But what I noticed before I left in New York is that what they're doing in New York City right now, they're pushing, all the immigrants, not only black people, but also, the Mexicans and so forth. They're moving us out of the area. They're moving us upstate. And how you can figure it out is that they have, just look where Section 8, where the housing choice vouchers are being applied to.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Folks are talking about vouchers a lot here, and he's taking too long to get where he's going. So, folks, get in, get it, and get out. Let me get caller from area code 929. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yes, hello. Hi, my name is Sandy, and I'm calling from New York City, Manhattan.
All right, Sandy from New York, from Manhattan. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi. It's an honor speaking to you. I just want to say that this was all done by design because Mayor Adams, when he first got into the office, the first thing he spoke about was immigrants, make sure immigrants vote, this and the third. And I don't think that the governor from Texas just voluntarily set them up. This is all set up. And watch when they get over here, they're going to be the first one in public housing. They're going to be the first one getting Section 8. State 3 did the same thing with the people from Afghanistan. They let everybody know they're going to do this for them. They're going to do that for them. And I'm sorry, I'm nervous. But this is all done by design.
Well, I want you to be aware of what
New
this
York-
actually means, because what this is actually leading to is, let's be very clear, now that they're on American soil, they might have been dropped off in New York, but they're not going to stay there. You're going to see a number of them over the course of the next 20 years. They're going to start fanning out to other places.
From the bus stop.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 310. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Hidden. I'm calling from L.A.
Okay, Hidden from L.A. What's on your mind?
Yes, so I'm actually calling because of we're doing too much talking and not enough doing. So if you really want to do something, change the currency. We have to change the currency.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're saying that everybody's doing too much talking, that they need to have some action.
Yes.
Your suggestion for action
That's
is to,
right.
quote, change the currency.
It's to change-
Could you please explain to
change
me
the currency.
how exactly would you change the currency?
Have a currency for black people only.
Sir, how would you have a currency for black people only?
We need to create our own currency.
Yeah, we've been hearing that from Hotep hobos for 20 years. You did not answer my question, sir. How would you do that, sir?
What action do you have besides talking? It's action. What action do you have? Change the currency. If you wanna make a change,
Sir, excuse me. Ask Governor
You
Cuomo
can't
what I
control
did.
nothing.
Ask Amber
control
Geiger
nothing
what I
without
did.
the money.
Ask Keisha
control
Bottom
the
B
money?
what I
There's the
did.
power.
So bum fellas like you sitting up here living in your mama's basement talking this bum nigga babble, to change the currency. How do you do it? Well, just change it. He doesn't even know what, this is what happens when you're unemployed. If y'all want to know, the chronically unemployed, they're on that lean. They're sitting in their mama's basement. Change the currency. He doesn't even know what currency is. We need to change it. How do we do that? Just do it. So if y'all want to know, this the young folk out here, they own the lean, they're on them drugs, they're on them bath salts. The best he can come up with, change the currency. You don't control currency. Well, that what it is. That what we do. We do that. By the way, he sounds like he does not sound foundational either, by the way. Well, of course of all, he doesn't sound rational. So I'm going to let him go back to the unemployment line and finish dreaming or whatever he was doing. Caller from area code 319. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, what's up? This is Adonis from Des Moines.
Adonis from Des Moines. What's on your mind?
I'm just going to address Hidden real quick. I mean, as far as changing the currency, did you not just listen to what Jason just said? Think backwards. If we have our own currency, we got to have our own businesses and communities to spend that at. And how do we get there? We have an agenda together. And how do we have an agenda? We talk with each other and we figure it out.
Well, in order you're saying that very concisely. In order to have a currency, you have to have an economy to support that currency. A currency is simply a medium of exchange. You must have an economy that utilizes the currency. So without that, he thinks that sitting on his couch with his Xbox is going to uphold the currency, and I assure you will not do so. But furthermore, you also have to have the ability to get people to sign on board with that currency. That's the issue that you're having with cryptocurrency now. You can't have a currency where its value fluctuates so wildly. The reason why U.S. currency is so stable, Chinese currency is so stable, is because it's backed by a government. It's not just a bunch of people with a handshake agreement. It's backed by a government. So that government is able to institute financial policy that keeps the currency stabilized. But understand that what I just said right now just flew straight over his head while he's sitting there on the couch smacking his mom across the back of the head and saying, get me some more Cheetos. Anyway, what do you want to talk about, brother?
Anyway, yeah, and the only reason I know that is because I listen to you talk, so I don't know what the hell he's thinking. But anyway, I don't have anything too profound to say. I just want to say it seems like a lot of fires are being started, like, around us, you know what I mean, as far as things we have to watch for. It seems like they're very aware of us, and they're trying to distract us, and, you know, we have this problem to take care of over here, this problem to take care of over there. And another thing I want to say, a lot of these older politicians and whatnot, they are like the Hulk Hogan of the black community, because they won't take a pen and they won't put anybody else on unless they're following them, you know. So it's a crazy world out here, and we got to do what we can to survive. So let's get together and talk it out and figure it out. Be one.
Thank you very much for giving this call tonight. Black first as always. He got in, he got in, and got out. Let me get caller from area code 319. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Shay from Waterloo, Iowa.
Shay from Waterloo, Iowa. And what's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I was told to call in by one of the moderators, and I didn't want to disrespect the chat, but I just asked the question, can you explain why us as a group withholding our taxes was not a good idea?
Okay, if you don't pay your taxes, what happens, ma'am?
Well, they come after you, right? But I'm not saying spend the tax money. I'm just saying withhold it.
Okay, ma'am, if you do not send the IRS their payment, or the city or the state their payment, what will happen?
Well, they will come and take the property eventually if you don't pay your taxes.
Okay.
If you own property,
if you don't pay the city or the state, they come and take the property. If you own a business or are self-employed, they come and get you.
So I understand, sir. No problem.
Okay.
I didn't want to disrespect the chat.
Excuse me. Slow down here. How old are you?
I am 40.
Okay. What do you do for a living?
I actually work in customer service, sir.
Okay. So you're an unskilled laborer. I'm not saying that to be demeaning. I'm trying to have a teaching moment here. Let me find out here. And I'm asking this for a reason. What did your parents do for a living?
They were both unskilled laborers.
Right. That's not telling me what they did, though.
My mom, she worked as a housekeeper. She was a manager of housekeeping for a hotel for like 20 years. She retired from that.
Okay.
My dad was not employable.
Okay. So what I'm saying here is that basically you only have a marginal understanding of how taxation works. And the reason that taxation has existed as long as it has is because it has a viable enforcement mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as simple as you saying, well, I don't like taxes, I don't pay them. Well, if that were the case, you would never have a standing government anywhere because that government could never actually get the taxation for it. So governments get taxes because taxes are compulsory. That means that they can compel you. That means that they can force you against, without your compliance, they can extract what they want. So to say don't pay your taxes when you already know that there's an enforcement mechanism, then I can only assume the reason you said that is because you wish to trigger that enforcement mechanism. Either that or you don't actually believe that the enforcement mechanism will go into effect. So which one is it? That you didn't know there was an enforcement mechanism, you think we can stare it down, or you think they're not actually going to use it?
Well, I just thought we could withhold it until they actually got ready to use it, and then we would pay it. But it would be enough of a disruption in their
black people, listen to me.
problems.
Black people are 1/2 of 1% of the nation's economy. How much of a disruption do you think our tax dollars are?
Not much.
So that's my point. That's the reason that boycotts don't work. Black people are 1/2 of 1% of the nation's economy. Literally, the federal government literally paid out multiple times that in pandemic checks. Multiple times that. And I got folk telling me that if we withhold our little pennies, that's going to lock up the whole economy. It doesn't work that way.
No. I see that now, sir. And I really appreciate you taking the time to explain that to me because I really love your show. I don't miss a show.
Broadcast.
So I thank you so
Steve
much.
Harvey has his show.
A
D.L.
broadcast.
Hughley has his show. I have a broadcast.
A broadcast.
Do you have any children?
Yes, sir. I have two.
Okay.
One deceased and one with me.
Now, this is why this is important. Are you married?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. And to all the Nimrods out there who still are sitting up here talking about, ooh, Jason's voice sounds really good. Must be using the voice changer. No, it's just that my baritone's not beat up this week. So my voice has actually done very good this week. So I'm very glad to be able to talk the way I'm used to speaking here. But there's a reason why I bring that up. I bring that up because understand, you can't stop an oppressive regime if you're not strategic. You can't be strategic if you're not practical. In other words, these have to be things you can actually do. They can't just be notions. There's got to be things that can actually be done. If you don't have that, nothing else happens. You can withhold your taxes, you'll just end up like Wesley Snipes. That's the issue.
Yeah,
I love Wesley Snipes, don't get me wrong, but if you withhold your taxes, that happens. Let's be very clear. The government comes after the low-hanging fruit when it comes to taxes. Those 87,000 IRS agents they want to hire, those are to go after the working class. They're not to go after the Jeff Bezoses. They're not going to go after the AT&Ts. They're not going to go after the Elon Musks. They're not going to go after any of them. They're coming out. Those 87,000 IRS agents are for you, the low-hanging fruit. They're for the people making $500,000 a year and less. Preferably the folks making $100,000 a year and less. It should be no surprise that Biden says we need to get all that online money. So CashApp, PayPal, Venmo, all the things that pay the OnlyFans people and the Instagram folk. All of a sudden he wants to focus on that. That was what he said when he came into office. He said that. Now we need to check out your bank accounts if money's being transferred online. We need to have the banks report to us all transactions so we can make sure we keep an eye on that. Yeah, to do something so massive, you would need to massively increase the number of IRS agents you have to audit people. To go over those kind of records, you would have to massively increase the number. What do you know? A year later, they want to hire 100. He said they weren't going to do that, and then a year later, they're hiring almost 100,000 new agents? That's not for the Jeff Bezoses. That's not for the Warren Buffetts. That's not for the Bill Gates. They don't go after those people. They go after the people who get a notice in the mail and you can't afford to fight them. They're not going to be able to take Jeff Bezos' house. They can come take yours. So when people say things like that, this isn't a situation where this is a protest. Oh, I'm just not going to pay my taxes protest. If you don't pay your taxes, penalties start to accrue. If you don't pay your taxes, penalties start to accrue. You don't get to argue, well, I'm oppressed and this, that, and the other. They don't want to hear that. So that's why I'm saying these are fanciful notions. They're just not things you can actually do. And I don't want us chasing things that we can't actually do. So in a perfect world, that little protest would matter. But first of all, you don't have enough of us who constitute enough of the economy for it to make a dent in the economy. All that would happen is they'd be like, well, now you just gave us just cause to come and take your economic standing, what little you had. You just gave us just cause to come get it. Well, see, they didn't pay taxes. We sent them notices for 2 years, 3 years. They needed to pay their taxes. And one more thing, baby, they ain't going to get, when you say, well, we'll withhold it right up to the point of them saying they're going to come get us. I don't know if you know how that works, but when they get ready to come get you, you ain't going to get no notice for that one. You don't get a notice.
No, right
you don't get a notice.
Kick in, like right before
but
they start penalizing.
But the penalties start the first time you don't pay them. Remember, penalties actually begin before you don't. So in reality, if you did try to do that kind of thing, and as a self-employed person, I should know, you're not going to make it a full calendar year. It doesn't work that way. And remember one more thing. For those of you who don't know, there's a clause in the IRS regulations that say that even if you did not get your written notice, you are still responsible for the debt. For those of you who don't know, these fanciful notions are a killer. You are still responsible even if you didn't get your written notice. In other words, if you're sitting at home waiting for a written notice to confirm that they realized you didn't pay, the IRS system is automated now. You're responsible for it even if you don't get a notification. You're still responsible. You can't, let me tell y'all, you cannot call up the IRS and tell them, oh, I didn't know that I owed because I didn't get the notice. The folk on the phone are going to be like, too bad, so sad. Glad you gave us a call. Here's what you owe. So for those of you who've worked a job and your employer takes out your taxes already, you don't know how to withhold taxes from the IRS. You don't actually know what happens if you did that. You work a customer service job, but you don't, unless you go off and go change the way withholdings are done in your taxes, but unless you've done that. But for the most part, you all don't know how that works because your employer pays your taxes for you. But if you're in a situation where you change the withholdings or deductions or whatever, and you have a tax bill at the end of the year, you're going to be responsible for that no matter what. You're going to owe for that no matter what. So just keep that in mind. It sounds simple enough, but that is not the way it will work. If you don't pay, at the least, you're going to have city and state come after you. At the least. And at the most, you'll have the feds come after you.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Y'all got to understand that when we start having discussions like this, we need folks who have practical answers to these things. If that doesn't occur, that's a problem. Because then you got folk talking about things they can't actually do. You have folks talking about things they can't actually do, and that doesn't serve us. We have to be very, very clear and very, very concrete about what can actually happen. But this is a large education effort. That was why I wanted to go ahead and talk to her about that, because there's really a bunch of folks out there who really don't know. There's a bunch of folks who really don't know. I'm taking that seriously. You got folks who don't know, and then they have kids. They don't know, they have children, and then they hear a notion. Well, if we all just get together, if we just get together and do X, Y, Z. And it's not that simple. If it were, the white folk would have done that a long time ago. If it were, the white folk would have done that a long time ago. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here on tonight's program here. Want you all to pay attention to that, because the real takeaway I want you to keep in mind tonight is that all these folks they're letting off in New York, they're going to be filtering out to other places. So their distribution point isn't going to be New Texas anymore. Their distribution point is going to be New York. New York's bringing them in, yeah, but then they're going to be able to go up and down the damn freeways to everywhere else. New York City is a cancer. We ought to build a wall around it. Forget building a wall at the Texas border. We need to build a wall around New York is what we need to do. But I slightly digress. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. We're very glad to have you all with us here. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program here on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat here. So Andrea Robertson, thank you very much for your support here tonight. We appreciate that. Michael Mayweather, Pan-African BMG Tau Matriarch, B MGTOW Patriarch, thank you very much for your support. And everybody else here, we appreciate that. And if you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go there and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and on Amazon. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. Check that out. This is my secondary channel up here, so go ahead and click that red subscribe button, click that yellow notification bell, and join us for each and every broadcast. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, eat this, drink this, sleep this, think this, breathe this, feel this, live this, love this, everything we are, Black first.